Tonight's episode includes a Layla Sleep and Dubs Labs affiliate link, which helps support the show at no extra cost to you. These are actually two brands that I use myself, so I am grateful they have been kind enough to work with us. I sleep on Layla's hybrid mattress, and I love that it gives you a soft side and a firm side in one mattress with cooling copper foam and supportive springs. Their signature K-POC pillow is also adjustable, breathable, and easy to shape to how you sleep. It was this pillow that first got me introduced to them. They have fairly long trial periods for most of their products, as well as free shipping. Use my Layla link in the show notes to see what fits your sleep best. The other product is rather new for me as well, but I've been using them non-stop these past few months. You know how regular headphones are too bulky or just straight up uncomfortable for sleeping? Well, that's where Dubs Labs headphones come in. They are incredibly thin, soft, on-ear sleep headphones designed to sit comfortably between your ear and your pillow, even if you sleep on your side. Link down below as well. Thanks for supporting the show. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where the night is gentle and unhurried, and you can let your mind grow quiet as you drift toward rest. Tonight you'll be carried into a rainy night in Seattle where lamplight glows on wet streets and the city hum becomes a soothing lullaby. You're allowed to soften now. Let your body settle into the surface beneath you as if it's been waiting all day to hold you. Feel the weight of your shoulders releasing, the tiny muscles around your eyes loosening, your jaw unclenching without effort. If it helps, let your lips part slightly and allow your tongue to rest. Breathe in slowly, as though you're breathing in warmth, and breathe out as though you're letting go of the day. In your imagination, the air is cool and clean. Somewhere beyond the window, rain is falling in patient, silvery threads. It taps softly on glass. It whispers against leaves. It gathers into little rivers that find their way along curbs and corners, and everything it touches becomes smoother, calmer, newly washed. Take another slow breath in, and as you exhale, let your thoughts drift like clouds across a dark sky. Noticed, but not held. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to solve anything. You can simply listen and let the story move like water, carrying you deeper into comfort, deeper into quiet, deeper into sleep. Now, as the rain continues its steady music, the focus begins to shift gently and naturally away from you and toward someone else, wandering through a Seattle evening that feels made for dreaming. The rain had been falling since late afternoon, the kind that didn't announce itself with drama, but arrived with a calm certainty, like a familiar friend. It turned the city into a softened watercolor, edges blurred, colors deepened, reflections blooming across sidewalks and streets. In this rain-washed Seattle, a quiet traveler named Mara moved slowly through the evening. She wasn't in a hurry. She didn't need to be. The night held her the way a warm scarf holds the throat, and the rain kept time for her footsteps, guiding her into a slower rhythm. Her umbrella was a dark, gentle dome above her head, catching drops that pattered and slid away. The sound was intimate, close as a whisper. Around her, Streetlights glowed like small moons, each one surrounded by a halo in the mist. The air smelled of wet cedar and pavement and distant coffee, Seattle's familiar perfume deepened by rain. Mara walked along a street lined with old brick buildings and narrow storefronts. The windows were warm rectangles in the dusk, each one offering its own little world. A bakery with fogged glass and trays of pastries. A tiny restaurant where chopsticks clicked softly. A plant shop full of glossy leaves that seemed to drink the rainlight. She let her gaze wander without asking anything of it. The mind, she knew, became quieter when it wasn't pushed. It could rest just as the body rested if it was allowed to float. At the corner, a bus sighed to a stop, its doors opening with a gentle whoosh. Few people stepped out, shoulders tucked, faces peaceful in their own private thoughts. The bus pulled away again, leaving behind a shimmer of red tail lights on the wet road like ribbons stretched across glass. Mara continued, and the rain continued with her, unbothered and steady. She found herself near a small park where trees stood dark and patient. The leaves caught raindrops and released them in slow drips, each one a quiet note. A bench sat empty beneath a street lamp, glistening. The grass was a deep green, almost black in the low light, and the air above it held a soft mist that made everything feel a little enchanted, as if the city were gently dreaming. Mara paused near the edge of the park and listened. Somewhere not too far away, water moved. Perhaps a fountain, perhaps a hidden stream finding its way through the city. She could hear it beneath the rain, a second rhythm, deeper and rounder. It reminded her that Seattle was a place where water was always nearby, always breathing. She pulled her coat a little closer and turned back toward the streets, guided by a feeling rather than a plan. A few blocks later, she found a bookstore she hadn't noticed before. It was tucked between a cafe and a narrow shop that sold handmade candles. The sign above the door was simple, painted in a calm, faded color. In the window, books were stacked in gentle towers, and a small lamp glowed beside them, illuminating a tiny scene. A mug, a scarf, a sprig of evergreen in a glass jar. The window was slightly fogged from the warmth inside. The rain traced lines down the glass like slow handwriting. Mara felt her shoulders soften. A bookstore in the rain always felt like an invitation. She stepped under the awning, shook a few drops from her umbrella, and opened the door. A bell chimed softly, and warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. Inside, the air smelled of paper and cedar shelves, and something faintly sweet, maybe tea, maybe the lingering trace of vanilla from the candle shop next door. The lighting was gentle, golden rather than bright. It softened the corners of everything, turning the rows of books into quiet, orderly pathways. Behind the counter, an older man with silver hair looked up and smiled in a way that asked no questions. His sweater was the color of driftwood. He gave a small nod as if to say, "Welcome, and also, take your time." Mara closed her umbrella and set it in a stand by the door. The sound of rain fell away behind her, muffled now but still present, tapping on the windows. Like a patient friend waiting outside, she wandered slowly between shelves. There were sections for travel, for poetry, for local history, for stories that belonged to distant lands. Some books were new and crisp, others were worn at the edges, their spines softened by many hands. She ran her fingertips lightly along one shelf, feeling the quiet texture of titles and time. The bookstore felt like a small pocket in the city where the noise couldn't reach. Even the outside world seemed quieter here. The rain became background music, and the occasional page turn sounded like a leaf moving in a gentle breeze. In the back, there was a little sitting area with a few armchairs and a low table. A lamp glowed there too, and a small bowl of wrapped candies sat near a stack of bookmarks. The chairs looked deeply comfortable, the kind you could sink into and forget you had a spine. Mara chose a book almost at random, something with a soft cover and a title that sounded like a lullaby. She carried it to one of the armchairs and sat. The chair accepted her with a slow, welcoming cushion.
She opened the book and began to read.
The words moved quietly through her mind, not demanding anything, not stirring urgency. Outside, rain traced the window. Inside, the pages offered a calm, steady path. Time passed without needing to be counted. At some point, Mara looked up. The bookstore was even quieter now. The man at the counter was writing something in a notebook, his pen moving slowly. A small cat, the color of smoke, was curled on a cushion near a heater, its eyes closed, its paws tucked neatly beneath it. The cat's breathing was visible in the gentle rise and fall of its body. Watching it made Mara feel as if her own breath could become that calm too, steady, soft, untroubled. She returned to the book, and the words carried her onward. When she finally closed it, she wasn't sure how long she'd been sitting there. It didn't matter. Her mind felt smoother, as if the rain had washed something away inside her. She walked back toward the counter, book in hand. "I'll take this one," she said softly. The man smiled again, scanning the cover with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times without ever rushing. He slid the book into a paper bag and tucked a bookmark inside, one made of thick paper, printed with a simple illustration of the Seattle skyline beneath falling rain. "Good night for walking," he said, his voice quiet and warm. Mara nodded. "It is." He handed her the bag. "Stay dry." "I'll try," Mara replied, though she didn't mind the rain. It felt like the city's way of speaking gently. She opened the door and the bell chimed again. Outside, the air was cool and clean. The rain greeted her immediately, tapping on her umbrella as she stepped back into it. The street lights shimmered. Reflections in puddles turned the sidewalks into shallow rivers of light. Mara walked with her book tucked safely beneath her coat. She wandered downhill, following streets that slowly drew her toward the water. Seattle always seemed to slope toward some edge, toward a view, toward a horizon, toward the sound of waves. In the distance, she could hear a ferry horn, low and mellow, like a lullaby note held in the throat of the night. The city around her continued its quiet life. A couple walked past sharing an umbrella. their steps synchronized. A person in a rain jacket jogged by, droplets trailing behind like a comet tail. Somewhere music drifted from a bar softened by glass and rain, becoming less a song and more a comforting hum. Mara arrived at a viewpoint where she could see the water. Beyond the railing, the bay lay dark and wide, with scattered lights floating on it. Boats, buildings, the far edge of the world. The rain blurred those lights, turning them into glowing pearls. The air smelled faintly of salt. The wind was gentle, barely more than a cool hand brushing her cheek. She stood there for a while, breathing in the night. The rain fell steadily, and Mara felt as if it was falling through her thoughts too, smoothing them, making them quieter. Each drop seemed to carry away a fragment of worry, a grain of tension, a sharp edge. She turned away from the railing and followed a path that led down toward the ferry terminal. The terminal was a bright, warm place beneath the night sky. People waited inside, their coats damp, their faces relaxed. The windows were tall and wide, and beyond them, the water moved in slow, dark breathing. Mara bought a ticket, though she wasn't going far. She simply wanted to ride the ferry for the comfort of it, the gentle rocking, the wide open quiet, the sense of being carried. When the ferry arrived, it glided in with calm grace, as if it were part of the water itself. The doors opened and people began to move on board. Mara stepped inside. The air smelled of metal and clean warmth. The floor was slightly slick from rain-damp shoes, but the ferry felt sturdy, safe, and calm. She found a seat near a window and sat, placing the paper bag with her book on her lap. She watched the rain pattern itself on the glass. Drops clung, grew heavy, then slid downward, leaving clean trails. The engine hummed quietly beneath the floor, a steady vibration that traveled up through the seat and into Mara's body like a slow purr. As the ferry pulled away from the dock, the city began to shift. The lights moved. The shoreline became a line of glowing dots. The rain continued, but out here it seemed even softer, as if the water below and the water above were sharing the same patient language. Mara watched Seattle recede. The skyline was gentle and muted, like a painting viewed through mist. The Space Needle rose in the distance, a familiar shape, softened by rain. It looked like a quiet lighthouse, guiding dreams rather than ships. Out on the water, the ferry's movement was slow and soothing. It rocked just enough to remind her she was afloat, held by something larger than herself. Other passengers were quiet. Some stared out the windows. Some leaned their heads back with eyes closed. Someone sipped from a travel mug, the steam rising in a thin ribbon. Mara's breathing slowed to match the ferry's rhythm. In and out, steady, easy. There was something about being on the water at night that made thoughts drift farther away. The city felt distant now. The usual urgency of streets and schedules dissolved into the dark, open space around the ferry. Mara felt as if she were inside a moving cocoon of warmth, traveling through rain and night toward a place that didn't require anything of her.
The fairy horn sounded again, low and round, and the vibration of it seemed to settle directly into her chest, loosening something there. She imagined the sound traveling across the water, bouncing gently off distant shores, disappearing into the mist. As the fairy continued, Mara began to feel a subtle shift. Something dreamy, almost mystical, as if the rain were weaving the world into a softer version of itself. She noticed how the lights on the water didn't look like simple reflections anymore. They seemed to float just beneath the surface, like lanterns held by the sea. The rain made circles on the water, countless small rings, expanding outward, overlapping, becoming patterns that felt like quiet symbols. Mara let herself simply watch, not trying to interpret, not trying to understand, just letting the scene move through her mind. In the gentle rocking, her eyelids grew heavy. She didn't sleep, not fully, but her thoughts softened, slowing like a tide turning. When the ferry approached the opposite shore, the terminal lights grew brighter. The ferry glided in, and the doors opened again. Mara stepped off into the rain. This side of the water felt quieter. The lights were fewer, the streets were calmer, the air more filled with trees and wet earth. She walked slowly, enjoying the way her footsteps sounded softer here, the ground damp and forgiving. She followed a path lined with evergreens. The branches held raindrops like tiny glass beads. When the wind moved, the drops fell in small showers like gentle applause from the trees. A few houses glowed warmly through curtains. A porch light here, a window lamp there, small islands of comfort in the night. Mara found a little cafe that was still open. Its windows glowed amber. Inside, someone had lit a few candles, their flames steady despite the rain outside. She went in and the warmth greeted her again. The cafe smelled of coffee and cinnamon and baked bread. A soft song played quietly from hidden speakers, more like a lullaby than music. The barista, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled as Mara approached. "What can I get you?" she asked gently. Mara considered. She wanted something that felt like comfort in a cup. "Tea," she said, "something warm." The barista nodded. "I have a lavender chamomile that's very calming." "That sounds perfect," Mara replied. She paid, then found a seat by the window. The chair was wooden but smooth, worn slightly from many people sitting in it, waiting for rain to pass or simply enjoying the hush of the night. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, the cafe was a small sanctuary. When the tea arrived, it came in a ceramic mug that warmed her hands. Immediately, the scent rose up, lavender, soft and floral, and chamomile, round and soothing. Mara took a slow sip. The warmth traveled down her throat and into her chest, spreading like a quiet glow. She opened the paper bag and took out her new book, setting it on the table. The bookmark with the rainy Seattle skyline peeked out. She didn't read right away. Instead, she watched the world beyond the window. The rain made the street shine.
A car passed slowly, its headlights stretching long across the pavement. A person walked by with a hood pulled up, their silhouette softened by mist. Leaves on a nearby tree trembled gently, releasing drops that fell like tiny pearls. Mara felt as if she were watching a dream unfold in slow motion. After a while, she opened the book again and read a few pages. The words felt even softer here, in the cafe's warmth, with tea in her hands and rain tapping quietly outside. Her mind began to drift, not away from the story, but into it, like stepping into warm water. At some point she closed the book, not because she was finished, but because she didn't need more. The night itself was a story, and she was already inside it. She finished her tea slowly, savoring the last warmth. The cafe remained calm, as if it were floating in its own gentle bubble of time. When she stood to leave, the barista gave her a small wave. "Have a peaceful night," she said. "You too," Mara replied. Outside, the rain welcomed her again. She walked back toward the terminal, her steps unhurried. The air felt even cleaner now, as if the rain had washed the whole world twice over. When she boarded the ferry again, it felt familiar, like returning to a quiet room. She found a seat near the window once more. The ferry began to move and Seattle's lights approached, soft and shimmering. Mara watched the city draw near. It looked like a constellation resting on the edge of water. As the ferry carried her, her thoughts began to turn inward again, but not in a busy way, more like a leaf drifting on a slow stream. She thought about the bookstore, its warm light, the quiet cat breathing in its sleep. She thought about the cafe and the lavender tea. She thought about the rain as a steady companion, never asking anything, simply being there. When the ferry docked, Mara stepped off into Seattle again, and the city received her with wet, glowing streets. She walked through the evening as if the rain had changed her pace permanently. Each step felt softer, more deliberate, more calm. The neighborhoods she passed seemed to be settling into sleep. Lights in windows dimmed, curtains were drawn, the city's sound lowered into a gentler hum. Mara wandered toward the place she was staying, a small apartment on a quiet street lined with maples and ferns. The building was old, the kind that had seen many rainy nights, and its lobby smelled faintly of wood polish and damp coats. She climbed the stairs slowly, listening to the soft echo of her steps. Inside her apartment, the air was warm. She switched on a lamp, and the room filled with a mellow glow. The windows were dotted with rain, the city beyond blurred into gentle shapes and light. Mara set her umbrella by the door and placed the book on a small table. She hung her coat carefully, then stood for a moment, simply breathing, feeling the quiet around her. She moved to the window and looked out. The rain continued, steady and patient. Street lights cast long reflections that trembled slightly as drops disturbed the puddles. A tree outside swayed gently, its leaves shining. Somewhere far off, another ferry horn sounded, low and soothing, like a bedtime note. Mara made herself a simple snack, something small and comforting, and then she prepared for bed without rushing. Every movement was slow, deliberate, kind to her body. She brushed her hair, feeling the gentle pull of the bristles, the soothing repetition. She changed into soft clothes. She turned the lights down until only the lamp beside the bed remained, glowing like a small moon. Then she climbed under the blankets. The bed was warm, the sheets smooth, the pillows soft. Mara lay on her back for a moment and listened. The rain on the window was quieter now, but still present, tapping in a steady rhythm. The building around her made soft, settling sounds, as if it too were relaxing into the night. Mara picked up her book and opened it, reading a little more. The words were gentle, drifting. Her eyes moved slowly along the lines, and her breathing became deeper, steadier. But the book wasn't the only story. The rain was telling its own. Outside, drops fell and slid and gathered. The city glowed and shimmered. The trees held water like jewels. The streets reflected light like calm rivers. Mara's eyelids grew heavier. She set the book aside, leaving the bookmark in place, a promise for another time. She turned onto her side, facing the window. In the dim light, the raindrops on the glass looked like tiny stars. And then, something soft and almost magical seemed to happen, not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle, dreamy one. As Mara watched the rain, her mind began to imagine that each drop carried a memory of the sea, that the rain had once been part of Puget Sound, lifted into the sky, gathered into clouds, and now returned gently to the city. She imagined the rain traveling through the air like a long, slow breath. In her imagination, the raindrops became small messengers, touching rooftops and leaves and streets, reminding everything to soften, to rest, to let go. The trees outside seemed to understand. They stood still, accepting the rain without resistance. The city seemed to understand too. Even the streetlights felt calmer, glowing steadily as if they were watching over sleeping homes. Mara's breathing matched the rhythm of the rain, in and out, slow and easy. Her thoughts drifted toward the water again, toward the ferry rocking gently, toward the wide dark bay holding lights like scattered pearls. The image was soothing, and it began to blur like a dream dissolving into deeper sleep. The night continued to quiet itself. In Mara's room, the lamp's glow felt softer, as if it were dimming naturally. Not because anyone turned it down, but because the darkness was wrapping everything in calm. The rain became a steadier hush, less like individual drops, and more like a single smooth sound, like a distant waterfall. Mara's body grew heavier beneath the blankets, sinking into warmth. Her shoulders dropped, her hands relaxed. Her face softened. Outside, Seattle continued its gentle breathing. The streets shone quietly. Trees held their wet leaves close. The water beyond the city moved in slow, unseen waves. Mara's thoughts became fewer. When one appeared, it drifted by like a leaf on water, and then it was gone. The book bookstore's cat curled in sleep. The ferry rocked in the dark. The cafe's candle flames stayed steady. The rain kept falling, kind and constant. Everything was safe. Everything was held. Mara's eyelids rested fully now, and her breathing was deep, slow, and easy, like the tide coming in, like the tide going out. The city, the rain, the water, the warm rooms, all of it became one soft lullaby, wrapping around her and carrying her down into quiet, down into comfort, down into sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.